And welcome to the Stateside Soccer Show. My name is Jordan Wiegand, and with me today is a man who runs on Duncan, apparently.
Yeah, this is actually a school shirt. I'm pretty sure this is illegal, but I think it's copyrighted. So, Duncan, if you want, you can sue my school, I guess.
It's a parody. It's a parody.
I guess.
I don't think it does.
Yeah, because it doesn't have the logo, really. It just has the font, which is always fun. Like, these kids these days, man, they find fonts and stuff. I guess it's easy on the internet.
I do the same thing. I do the same thing.
It's wild, though. Like, I mean, back then you kind of had to guess. Like, remember when we had to guess at what was the closest font, and then they had ones that looked like Disney and they weren't Disney.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's just you could just find it within a second, like what font, and then download it. It's insane.
You know, my first time looking up a font, do you know what it was?
Sans serif.
It was the Harry Potter font of the numbers at the bottom of the thing.
Really?
I really liked the way the numbers look, and I forget what the font is, but it tells you in the book. It says this font is used for this.
Wow.
But yeah, that was the first font I ever looked at. And if you're wondering why we're talking about font and all that, it's because this is going to be a very depressing episode, and we're kind of avoiding the topic for a bit. But let's go ahead and knock out some of the pre stuff before we get into the U.S. men's national team, because what we're going to be covering today is the window matches, which were the men's team versus Japan and against Saudi Arabia, the last two friendlies before the World Cup. So I wanted to say before we get into that, the giveaway for the Panini sticker album has been completed. The winners have been notified, and I'm in the process of sending that out to them. So congrats if you are one of the two winners of the Panini giveaway. Okay, let's go to something that was announced today. The Rose Bowl game. So, okay, since we're going back to 29 teams and an unbalanced schedule, unbalanced meaning not in the sense of what it usually means, right? A balanced schedule usually means you play every team twice. Unbalanced in this sense means that we're going to have some leftover games for teams in the same conference. So a lot of times you're going to be playing the same team 3 times, which is not typical when we have even numbered teams. Which means LA Galaxy and LAFC will have an El Trafico 3 times in 2023. And because of that, LA Galaxy is giving up one of those games to host it at Rose Bowl, and is trying to fill that stadium up and at least break the record, which I think is 69,000 people for an MLS match. It can fit 90K. I don't know if it'll fit 90K, but it's going to be, I think, pretty cool. So the season, this is going to be their first game of the season, by the way. So I love that. El Trafico starts off the season. That's great. On February 25th. So we kind of already know a date, Logan, that we have to have all our previews done by.
Yeah.
So I think what that means, because the World Cup is going to end right before Christmas, I think that means we're probably going to have to do multiple teams in a preview. I don't think we're going to be able to do one team per episode like we've done in the past, just because that's only giving us 8 weeks to get it done and enjoy the holidays. We're probably not putting an episode around Christmas, so just forget that. So really that gives us maybe 6 weeks if we start it the first week of January. So we're probably going to have to reshift some of that and do 3 teams a preview. So there's that. Okay, let's talk about the actual soccer side of things, though. In El Trafico, in the Rose Bowl, to open up the season, in the ad that they took out, they have the Apple logo, because we know it's going to be on Apple. I would assume this is one they're going to try to get on the linear TV as well. But what's your thoughts, Logan, on kicking off the season with El Trafico in the Rose Bowl?
Yeah, I mean, I was just confused because I didn't know that LA Galaxy was in the Big Ten.
Logan's very
Yeah, I'm distraught. No, I don't know. I was more in the thought of like, I just hope it doesn't underwhelm. You know what I mean? Like, I hope they do feel it. I hope it does get the attention that it deserves. You know what? I really hope. I hope the LA Galaxy adds somebody of star power, because you're going to have Gareth Bale there, I think, and uh, essentially, I think LAFC has the firepower to draw in international fans and other fans in that area. I'm just hoping that the Galaxy make a big splash this summer, just so because I think they'll fill it up pretty well. But I think it'll be even better if like Galaxy I'd go out and add, one of these special talents that either are European talents that are coming over after World Cup to play or whatever it might be. I think that would be pretty interesting, and I think LA is on the verge of being that team that goes out and makes a big splash, because they haven't in a little bit. With Chicharito still kind of there, I do still feel that they're kind of just stuck, and LAFC is going to get all the firepower. But man, could you imagine, Jordan, if Galaxy go out and get somebody that just has a huge resume that goes along with LAFC and them playing out there? It'd be nuts.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, the promos have been all focused on Chicharito.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can think about this, LA, Southern California, very heavy Mexican national team fan present. So what I would assume is we are going to have some of them try to pack that stadium, I would hope.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it is a LA Galaxy home game, which means they still get more of the seats to sell. They're doing a limited number for LAFC. They're trying to figure out what that number will be, because they don't want it to be 50-50.
Right.
But it should be darn close to that, because you want as many LA people in the stadium there,
Mm-hmm.
If you can fit 90K, if you can have 30,000 LAFC fans and then the rest LA Galaxy and neutrals, like that's a pretty good match, I think. I just hope it is. I just hope it gets close to full, But I think it's cool that we can kind of open up the season on this, and I think they should do more of this where. And by the way, this is like a product of the fact that it's an uneven schedule, like we said. My thought is they should really try to open up the season with these type of big games more often. We don't get that. How many times do we look at the schedule and say, "Oh, the first week is kind of bare"?
Mm-hmm.
Why is rivalry week always in July and June? What are we doing? Why can't we have like the opening week be like all these big matches to get people in stadiums, get people tuning in right off the bat? I think that would be a better deal than waiting. Yeah,
I agree. I mean, why not and have Toronto play Austin, because there's a lot of firepower there. Start creating some of these battles that you just don't get to see very often, especially interconference. Like interconference is more fun, I think, just because you don't get to see a lot of them often. Like you don't have to really worry about them in the playoffs, so you don't really get to see them in meaningful games in the postseason unless you make the MLS finals. So it really is. It's interesting that MLS doesn't have like that marquee, because every sport, even college football, who usually start out with cupcake games, they have that big primetime game on Thursday and then Saturday at like noon for that first week. They just have that big, huge game. NFL does the Thursday night game with the Super Bowl teams. So yeah, I agree. Right. I agree. Yeah, I agree with you though. Like I think having it one of those teams and then having them play up against, a challenger that maybe, like you said, maybe finish second in the East or whatever it might be, or second in the West, to have those big marquee matchups to get people interested. Because once you get people hooked in for a season, it's like a TV show. They're hooked in the rest of the year. So I don't know. It is interesting that they haven't done this as much. And now, I mean, that ad is so cool, Jordan, with the rows, and it's got the two teams on that, like almost like gray page that LA has. I think it was the LA Times had posted. So
yeah, they bought out an ad space for it.
Yeah, it's awesome. So
talking about interconference and rivalries in your conference, Nashville is going to be very confused. Who is Nashville's rival? Well, Next year, we'll figure it out again because they are going back to the Eastern Conference due to St. Louis taking their spot in the Western Conference. Now, this is probably new for you, Logan. Not so new for me.
Right.
There was a time in probably 2011 to 2013 where Houston and Sporting Kansas City were flip-flopping from the East and the West every time there was a new expansion team. We've kind of avoided that recently because a lot of the expansion teams have been very East or very West until now we're kind of starting to get more of these central teams like Nashville, St. Louis. So I'm sure it's frustrating for Nashville fans, and it's a little frustrating for me because we've been talking about, okay, now they're in the West. Here's what they got to do to compete, and they're going to be going right back over to the East now. And I can see as a new team, fans probably being like, we haven't had any time to even build a rivalry yet, right? Because we were in the East for 2 seasons, right? One of those years was a COVID abbreviated season. And then where fans couldn't even really be in anyway. And then you go to the West where they're playing all these tough teams and they're doing well. They're in the playoff hunt right now. And then they're going to go right back to the East. I'm sure they're probably actually ecstatic because you're going to get to an easier Eastern Conference than you are in the West. And you know what? St. Louis is probably praying that they would have been in the East. But I don't know. Any thoughts on the flip-flopping here for Nashville again?
It's just hard to get established as a fan, I would think. Like you're flip-flopping back and forth between the conferences. And then who knows what's going to happen when they add 2 more teams? It just seems that MLS it's not done growing, so you can't get comfortable. I mean, this could end up putting somebody else in the Eastern Conference in the Western side, or the Western side on the East side, because they're going to add teams and continue to do so. So, yeah, I mean, it's got to be tough as a fan, just because you're so used to having those conference rivals, and then now they're going to throw you back in the East. And I don't know. I mean, I imagine that Nashville will be most excited about the fact that I think the East is more wide open. So I think fans will enjoy that, and it's less travel. So I think the organization will like it, but you can't just keep doing this to fans. I think there needs to be transparency. I think with MLS too, I think for a long time, this league has been trying to figure out who they are. And until we really get established, I think it's going to be hard for fans to watch this league. And we've talked about this multiple times. Eventually, I think it does get to a point with like expansion of DP spots, expansion of TAM and GAM, maybe elimination of TAM and GAM, depending. I mean, it really is. It's a league in flux, and I think it works for now just because it is younger. But I mean, soon you've got to establish a rule, because I think so many people are traditionalists when it comes to sports. I think people just want to know what's going on, because now you add, so like if you take for instance MLB, they add more wildcard teams, or NBA where they have the weird playoff game play-in thing now. I don't like that kind of stuff. I
have to always update my dad with like what rule changes have happened.
It's annoying.
You know what I'm saying? Because I'm like, oh yeah, they added another playoff team. He's like, that's dumb. And then here's the new overtime rules for college football or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. That kind of stuff where it gets, for this, it's very, you're trying to, I think where it really detrimental, right, is that you're trying to grow a new fan base. A new city is having a team. When Sporting and Houston kept flip-flopping, they were established teams. They've been there, for a while. When you're having a new team and they're like, yeah, and guess what? They're probably having they had some good matches against Austin. They had some good matches against Seattle, so like that, where they're like, yeah, you're our new rivals now. And then they're like, actually, we're back to facing Chicago, and Chicago is like their closest rival, I guess, at this point. Or maybe like a Florida team. I don't know. Like what's going to be the closest for a Tennessee team?
Yeah.
But I'm just trying to imagine, like, putting myself in the spot of, if you are I'm a Ravens fan or whatever, I don't like the Steelers or the Browns or the Bengals. And then if you just drop me in the AFC South, I'll be like, Colts and Jaguars.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, there is bad blood between Baltimore and the Colts because they left Baltimore, but I didn't pick the best the best division to put them in.
Right.
But then you're like, oh no, now I have to learn to hate these teams. And then they're like, you know what? Actually, you're going right back to the AFC North, and you're like, okay, now I hate these guys again. Like, it can be really jerky back and forth, I think.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's do this to make it a little easier. Let's take a quick break. We'll put in a little ad here, and on the other side of the ad, we'll get real hot and steamy about this U.S. men's national team window. All right, we're back from our break, so let's get into it here. Let's talk about the U.S. men's national team as they prepare for the World Cup. Because Logan, here was Berhalter's comments after the match.
It's over. We are screwed.
Actually, no, that was just all the fans. They played against Japan. They lost 2-0. And Japan looked really great, by the way. They were pressing like crazy. They knew what they were doing. They forced us to turn the ball over, 50 sometimes in our half in the first half of the game. There was not a lot of fans there. There was not a lot of fans there today. It was games in Germany and Spain, featuring none of those teams. So, of course, not really a draw while Nations League is going on. But importantly, they got to play some games away from home, which we haven't been able to do a lot lately. So then we got to Greg's comments after the match and before the Saudi Arabia game, where he said there are 5 starters out of this camp. So some people, for whatever reason, kept thinking he meant Pulisic, which Pulisic was in the camp and he was going to play today. So I don't think he meant that. I think he meant, Miles Robinson, maybe Michael, maybe Chris Richards. You're looking at Anthony Robinson. Who else was missing? I'm assuming Weah, and I'm assuming one of them is Zach Steffen.
Yeah.
Because by his own comments, when according to Meg Swanick, if you follow her on Twitter, who was in the press conferences, says that Berhalter's assessments both times he was asked, which was right after the Japan game and right before the Saudi Arabia game, he said Turner was fine. The best player on the pitch was fine. And we've kind of talked about this before, where we think Greg is going to be taking and starting Steffen no matter what. Like we're pretty much, and I think most of U.S. men's Twitter at this point is very Turner is the number one. But I'm not so sure Greg sees it that way.
I don't think he sees it at all. Like I'm in the boat and in the camp of thinking that because of his ties with Zach Steffen, he is his number one. And unless Zach is hurt, he must see something in Zach that he likes way more than Matt can ever do on the pitch. And I think it's distribution of the ball, but you and I are old school in believing that the keeper is there to keep the ball out of the net. I could care less how his distribution is most of the time, Jordan, because our center backs are not those kind of center backs that build from the back anyway. And I know we'll get into this long-winded rant, both you and I, because I'm in the belief that this system that Greg believes he needs to play is not the system that works for the players. And now you have a collision of, I do think now, and you're starting to see it with some of the antics on the field, which we'll get into. I don't know if you saw that part, but it really is. It's a system that doesn't work with distribution. Like that, we are not a Man City. We are not a distribution from the goalkeeper like an Ederson, who can distribute the ball a lot better than Zach Steffen can. And not to mention, Zach is not a better shot stopper than Matt Turner. So I don't get it.
Yeah, Greg is all about system, right? Here's another tweet that he said here was he'd rather Pepe kind of look like a good striker in our system than score 5 goals. I'm sorry, what?
I don't know what that means.
I'd rather Pepe look god awful out there and score 5 goals. That is the thing. No, how many times, Logan, have we seen Ronaldo, Messi, any of these good players have awful games and then out of nowhere, boom, there's a goal. Now they have a hat trick, and you're like, well, they were just playing like crap. It doesn't matter as long as they put the ball in the back of the net, you know? And we'll get to more of that. I'm just kind of focused on right after the Japan and right before the Saudi Arabia game because I have a lot to say about what he said today. But yeah, there you go. That's his comments as he's looking at, like, he wanted personality, he said, to show up in the Saudi Arabia game. I don't think we got that either. Now, I couldn't really watch much of the Saudi Arabia game. I was in the office today.
Yeah.
So, you know, was not able to watch any of that. And I came right home and we did this. So not even able to like watch it on demand, you know, before we did the podcast. But from what I hear on all of the places is that we weren't looking good. So let's go ahead and talk about that, I guess. 0-0. And, you know, I saw some clips of Aaron Long on Twitter looking terrible, which is par for the course since his injury at this rate. Gio Reyna left injured, kicked the ball out 30 minutes in, subbed himself out, which, by the way, then people were like, oh, yeah, this is planned. And it's like, nobody kicks the ball out to say, oh, this is a planned sub. They would just wait until the next time. And then they confirmed it was tightness in his hamstring, which is fantastic, Logan.
Right.
Fantastic that's what we're going through again with Reyna. And I don't, you know, put any bad thing on him or anything. It's just he can't catch a break, and we have to now operate as if he's not going to be healthy enough to rely on.
Right.
At this point. So get your backup squad ready for whoever you have second underneath Reyna, because they're most likely going to have to play. Maybe he'll be fine for the World Cup, but I mean, fair share. Whoever his backup is going to be playing more because of just his injuries. Here's a tweet from Max Bredos after the game. By the time the World Cup rolls around on November 21st for the U.S. men's national team, their last goal scored was June 14th by Jordan Morris versus El Salvador. We didn't score at all this window. We went 180 minutes without scoring and only putting 2 shots on target. We'll talk about the strikers in a little bit. Now, Greg is not going anywhere before the World Cup. Players looking disinterested. Pulisic not, you know, dapping him up or whatever. High-fiving every team member except Greg. He's not going anywhere. All right. But he shouldn't be the manager past this. And I even said that, I'm pretty sure I said it on the show.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
Win the World Cup, he shouldn't be back.
Right.
Because the messages get so dull for the same manager after a 4-year span. I mean, look at what Germany did. They won it in 2014, and they were god-awful in 2018, and they still look pretty pedestrian today. But they kept their manager after winning the World Cup, and they went nowhere. And I feel like with the international game, it just gets stale after a bit, and you need that new blood. And anybody that's saying, does anybody miss Jurgen Klinsmann like I'm seeing on here? Hell no. All right, Klinsmann, if you're complaining about Greg having a system that fits, Jurgen was playing players in the wrong position. He had a mutiny in the locker room that ended up getting him fired. And the reason he's fired is because they were close to not making the World Cup. And guess what? They actually didn't make it that year. Right. So no, I don't want him back. There's more answers than just Greg and Jurgen Klinsmann. So let's get over that. Anyway, Greg's not going anywhere. So can't the players just do whatever the hell they want on the field? I'm tired of everybody not blaming the players too, okay? Because These players have to step up. They have to, if they look disinterested, they have to get over it. If they don't like Greg, they have to get over it. And the reason I'm saying that is because this is for your country. This is for the World Cup. Put on the jersey, get on the field, and just play. Just play good. Ignore all of his instructions if you need to. We know Pulisic will do that. He didn't listen to Thomas Tuchel when he scored that goal against Real Madrid. So do that again. You know, like, can't they all just be like, yes, Greg, we understand, and then get on the field and be like, let's play to our strengths. Who's going to stop him? If we win 5-0, is Greg going to bench all those players next time? No, because he looks like a genius if we win 5-0. So, I don't know. I know that's unrealistic, but I'm just like, play with some goddamn heart and do something.
The Japan game I get. I understand that. That one was a lot of youth running up against a team that is always well-oiled machine. Like I said, I mean, you run up against these teams, Jordan, like Japan, and they're those kind of teams.
They had very good stats for away from home too.
Yes,
Japan.
Yeah, and they're organized, they're well coached, they're disciplined, and that is a huge. I mean, those are ingredients for a disaster for a young team. So that pressure that we're feeling, that was, I think that should have been expected. While yes, we did not look great, we kept giving the ball away. When we did not give the ball away, Jordan, we were competing with Japan. So, I mean, we're competitive with these teams. But I think if you're going to play the U.S. men's national team, I think Japan just gave you the roadmap on how to beat them and beat them soundly, is to pressure them. Because, again, young guys are going to make a lot of mistakes. And especially in a system where these center backs, like I love Walker to death and I love Aaron Long, but they're not guys that like you play out of the back with. I'm not somebody that likes to play out of the back unless you have very talented center backs. Like you have to have probably, like a Van Dijk, or you have to have a Ruben Diaz, or you got to have those big guys in the back that just know how to do it and are okay distributing the ball and able to do it with ease. Walker Zimmerman and Aaron Long are just not that kind of person. Like I just don't see where they are those kind of people. Plus, it also relies on you having a very good midfield, which at times, or midfield's good, but then there's times where they just disappear as well. But it's more of this system that they're having to play, and like you said, I think it goes down to, is the U.S. is going to play well if they stop playing, and it's going to be hard to do, but they need to try to get away from this system that Greg has kind of played in, and I don't know if that's possible for Greg, because Greg. And you can probably read off all the stuff that he said after the game. It's pretty much like, this is the system. They need to learn to play in it. And we're not going to have success unless they play in it. And it just doesn't fit our guys. Like it really doesn't. Brendan doesn't fit in the system. McKennie doesn't fit in the system. Christian doesn't fit. Weah doesn't fit. It's like, at what point are you Greg, and you look at the team and go, okay, these guys are attack-minded guys that like to go on the inside and create from the inside spots, rather than trying to kind of like create from down the side where we're trying to cross balls in and create and have possession all the time. It just doesn't seem like that. We seem to be more of just, let's just attack, and let Brendan and Christian and Weston and Timothy just create. And then out of those chances, just pick off balls that are just dropping in the box. So, I don't know. I feel like Greg's much more possession, and this is not a possession-based team.
Well, you're right. What the issue is that, and if managers do this all the time, is they try to fit the players to the system instead of fitting your system to the players.
Right.
So this will sound dumb, all right? But when I play FIFA, right, and I choose a random team, Harrogate, I work with the squad that's there, and I bring in players I want, but I don't have the funds to turn over 11 players. Guess what? In the U.S. men's national team, this isn't Columbus Crew. You can't go find players that fit your system. These are the players. Your U.S. eligible players are the players. So what do I do when I'm playing FIFA? I just have to play to the strengths of the players I have. I usually rock with whatever formation's already there, unless if I find out it doesn't work for the team. So what I'm equating that with is obviously not saying FIFA is real life. But do the same thing, Greg. Realize that these players, if you have to keep going over, he said something about like they knew the definitions, they were going over stuff, but they didn't seem to get it. And I'm
Yeah.
like, you're making it too complicated. Go out there, kick the ball, hit it in the back of the net.
Mhm.
How hard is it? Why do we? And it drives me nuts. And I've been saying it on stoppage time before we kind of phased it out. Right? Is you should be able to have a backup plan.
Yeah.
And what was his reasoning for not bringing in PFOC? Well, we already know what he does, and we wanted players that fit the system. No, I said this about Liverpool, right? Sometimes you just need a player that can change what position the game is in, right? So, like,
Right.
Matt would say, like, they don't need, like, a tall, like, just striker.
Right.
A striker, that they like playing with the false nine. And I'm like, well, maybe if that's not working, you need to go a different route. So I would love if I had that backup plan, right? So if it's not working, then you have PFOC and you say, guess what, guys? We're going to put him in up top. You guys are just going to cross that ball in a million times, and he's going to win some, and he's going to score goals. We're going to go route one football here after it fails.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it should be.
It's Erling Haaland. Pep took Erling Haaland, and if you watch City and you've watched them for long enough, they don't play the same that they did. While yes, they're still possession based, they now have to play with him making runs through the midfield where Kevin usually was. So Kevin has to adjust to that system. The wingers are actually trying to find the ball more central and trying to create coming back towards Haaland or creating over the top to him because he's so large. That's what you look for. And I agree with you. I hate when people go, he doesn't fit the system. It's really, when you think about it, the only sport that is so stubborn and the way that things work that they're unable to change. You change with your personnel, and that's the hardest thing. And that's why so many coaches get fired in multiple leagues is their unwillingness to change based on who they have. You can't change who you have most of the time, right, throughout the season, and especially national team. You have a pool of players. You can't change that. You can't go buy a Ronaldo or Bernardo Silva or somebody like that. Like, you can't just go buy somebody to fix your problems. So you have to have the fix internally. Well, Jordan, I think the fix internally is we're very good at having those guys isolate on their own with a defender because Pulisic can create, Brendan Aronson create, Timothy Weah creates, Gio Reyna creates, McKennie creates. But it feels like they're just so like he wants them to just pass, possession. When these guys, I think, are all more so like, I mean, maybe it's a better counter-attacking team. Like, sit back, smack them in the face, and then take off running with it because you've got so much speed with Pulisic and Aronson and McKennie and Weah. Like, you've got so much quickness and youth. Just let them play. Like, at this point, if you're Greg, you go, all right, guys, what do you think we should do? What's wrong with that? He seems so like, I hate to say this because he seems like a nice guy, but it seems so arrogant in the way that he coaches. Like, oh no, this is the right way because it's my system. Why not sit down with your players and go, all right, let's have an honest conversation. What do you think would work best for your player, like your teammates?
Yeah, how do you like to play, right?
Right.
Where do all those players create, Logan?
I mean, they're all creating in the midfield, I think.
They create at their club.
Right.
They don't create
here.
And that's the problem.
Right.
Greg was fired from Hammurabi, right? That's what everybody shares, the same picture all the time of the MLS.com article that says, Greg fired for sight of a lack of offense. What have we noticed in this team lately?
There's
a lack
no
of offense. We were doing great at the end of qualifying and into the summer window. for whatever reason, we've regressed. And guess what? It's very deflating. It's deflating because this is the last window before the World Cup. We don't get that whole summer like they do in a summer World Cup, where we get to play games in the build-up to the World Cup. We're going to go right into it. The next game is the World Cup, and that's something that's very scary. What I was hoping from Greg, too, is, the Japan game, he had timed substitutions that he had already pre-planned. I was like, can't we just act like this is the World Cup? Act like it's the World Cup and make subs as you go to adjust to the game. Don't be promising people pre-minutes or whatever. These are your last two things. His whole thing now is, hey, we're maybe they'll feel a little better when they're in the World Cup because there's no more spots they're competing for. They're in the World Cup. Well, maybe we should already have been deciding who's in the squad then before these last two build-up games then. I don't know. Like, if that's what's in one, if you're not able to handle the pressure of playing for your spot, then I don't think you're somebody that should be on the team.
Yeah. No, I agree. Why did he? I had no idea that he had said that he didn't want to bring PFOC in because he was trying to see what else was out there that fits the system better. Like, why does he?
It wasn't word for word. It was
but like
pretty clear.
Yeah.
He doesn't rate him, I don't think.
No, and it's experimental. Like, why are we running 18 or 19 players out there right now? Like, I get trying to find depth, but it's Jordan. It still feels like he's preparing for what's to come rather than like trying to really just hone in on the thing. Like, it still feels like he's in flux about everybody. Like CP10, like I wouldn't be shocked if like Christian ended up on the bench for some of these games at this rate. Like, it just seems like he's toying with things just to still see if things are going to work. Like a coach is trying to figure out what's going on in the middle of this match because he's like, well, I haven't really taken the time to really figure out what this system is supposed to look like and I'll give him some leeway in the fact that we've never really had a window where everybody was healthy. I'll give him that. It's very difficult when a lot of your guys that you're really going to rely on aren't healthy all the time. But this is just, I don't know, it just seems like he's trying to tinker with things way too late in the game, and he's going to get in the World Cup, and he's going to bomb out, crash out, because we have a tough group. Iran is very good. I watched them play today some in highlights and after school, and they look fantastic. Wales, if Gareth Bale plays well, they're going to – and England, even though they're not playing well, they would just stomp the U.S. right now. So
they just played pretty well against Germany.
Yeah,
I mean, they were a bad first half, and then they came back and drew. Even had the lead for a bit. Here's their last away from home. Okay, away from home in their last 8 games, they've had no wins. Okay, and guess where the World Cup is? Not in the USA. Not until 2026.
What do you mean it's not?
The U.S. men's national team have 1 win in their last 7 matches against teams that are going to the World Cup. They haven't scored in the other 6. Okay? 0-0 Saudi Arabia, 0-2 to Japan, 0-0 to Uruguay, 3-0 Morocco. That's the only win. Costa Rica, 2-0 there. Mexico, 0-0. Canada, 0-2. So, not great. Here's some of Greg's comments after the game. We're not as confident as I'd like. We're playing tentative. The connections are not like what we want. The intensity and effort was excellent. We need to keep improving. Guess what? You can't really keep improving at this point because the next game is a World Cup game. The Berhalter said the game was a positive step for the group, but wasn't happy with the execution.
So what is the positive step? That Scally ended up being better than he thought? Like, is that his takeaway?
I think it just means the intensity.
You can play as hard as you want, but it does not make up for the lack of ability to coach or make adjustments, which he did not do in Japan's game. If you watch that game, Greg had a tendency when we were playing well to make at least some changes in the half. If you watch that Japan game, it was like they were shocked that they were going to keep pressing them in the second half. I was like, what do you think they were going to do? Like, lay over? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. I'm excited for this World Cup because the U.S. will be back in it, and I'm hoping they just kind of honestly just ignore Greg, because I really am looking for, and this is sad, but I'm looking forward to 2026 because he won't be here anymore. Like it
So you
just
think? So you think?
right, exactly. Could you imagine if he had success and they keep him, like just a little success, and then he does the same crap next year?
What
or
I'm
next
worried is of no success and they keep him.
Ugh. I
Look,
think
this is a place. This is U.S. soccer. They ran on changes for the new thing. We've seen not a lot of changes. We've had so many. One, Greg was hired because of his brother, right?
yeah.
He's no longer there, so you're like, oh, maybe that'll be fine. But I don't know. Maybe he gets along with the other people. Maybe they're not thinking this looks terrible. I don't know what their thought process is. What do they see as a good thing? If we get out of the group, is it enough to extend? Is it we bomb out and they say we believe in his system and we're going to keep it and get them ready for 2026? I hope not, but I don't have faith that they'll make the right decision. Here's another quote from him. There's not many players that performed up to their normal levels at camp. Anyone you'd ask about, I'd say they performed below their normal level. Asked if he got clarity on anything in camp, he said he had. They followed up with him and he said things. So I'm assuming he didn't want to get into it on the thing, but I hate when coaches are vague like this.
Because it either shows, like, if you're vague like Bill Belichick, at least he knows what's going on. When you're vague like Greg, I think it's literally because he doesn't know. Like, I don't think he knows what he's figured out, except the fact that Zach Steffen he misses and longs for. And then Aaron Long is not it. And Joe Scally, I think, is a really solid option for your left back or right back spots. Like, I really do. I think they found some depth in behind Jedi and Serginho, which is good because both of them have struggled with health at times. So having Scally play as well as he did, man, he looked good. And what a time to show, because I do think this solidified his spot on the roster, because I think they'll take him with as some backup for some of those defenders. But they found nothing in the attack. Is that what he found out, that they're just not going to score goals?
Well, here's scary, all right? Why the hell are we not playing Sargent when he just refound his form? Here's why. Apparently, Berhalter mentions that Ferreira came in because they were looking to win the game, and Jesus gave them the better chance than with Sargent. Says that giving Sargent 45 minutes this camp was not ideal, but it is what it is.
I don't understand. It's like he's mad. It's like I don't know. It's like he's almost waiting to react to the press questions. Like that's what he coaches the game like he's in a press conference. That's what it feels like.
What drives me nuts, Logan, is this has been the weakest part of our team since Dempsey left. Right? We've been wondering who is going to take this position. And we just recently saw PFOC make a move to the Bundesliga and score for a team that's in the top of the Bundesliga. And we're like, great. Yes, he had that awful miss in qualifying, but he's starting to do it at a higher level now.
Mm-hmm.
Pepe makes a move to the Eredivisie, gets a goal and assist, and gets caught up. Which is fine. I'm glad to see Pepe doing good. Ferreira still doing things in MLS. We talk about it every week. Sargent, somebody that haven't heard from in a while, starts going off and scoring when he actually plays as a striker. And guess what? He gets called in. And guess what? He plays 45 minutes out of 180 and doesn't get a start. It's that kind of stuff that is just, why? Why aren't we giving him more of a chance? Why isn't PFOC in here? Why aren't we, when the players are finally scoring, why is it all of a sudden they don't fit the system and not form-based, which is what he's been ranking everything on before? So why is that switch happening now? People have shared articles with him saying going into the World Cup is going to be based on form. And then we get there and Pepe gets called in and Jesus Ferreira gets called in and they get starts and they get, chances to come in to win the game. Jesus Ferreira doesn't score that much for the U.S. men's national team when it's not El Salvador or, Guatemala. Why aren't we giving Sargent a chance when he has scored for the U.S. national team? He's really just struggled at Norwich, and he finally got goals at Norwich. So it's just, it felt like we finally started getting answers of, okay, it should be Sargent and Pifak, and then Ferreira, then Pepe last, I think is the order I would go in right now. And I don't know, maybe even Ferreira last. But I feel like that's kind of like where you're looking at the top four. But no, we're not going with that. So hell if I know. But I just feel like we finally were getting answers, and then it's like, no. And then the whole time when we had the goalkeeper debate, which I'm sure Greg never actually had that debate, but we did, and we think, okay, we finally found him. It's Matt Turner, and then he's like, he's fine. So I don't know at this point what is going on, why we can assess Pifak in the few times he gets chances, but we have to keep running Aaron Long out there. You don't have enough on him to say he's fifth option,
right? And
try somebody else. Zimmerman looks better when he's not next to Long. So we can't have both of them there. It'd be Zimmerman with Miles or with Chris Richards. And there you go. That should be it.
And eventually that's going to be Eric Palmer Brown, I think, or Mark McKenzie, which still shocks me that neither of them really got a run. I don't want to see Aaron Long. Like, I'm sorry, but and then you have John Anthony Brooks, who that's never been clear as to what happened there. So something clear. I'm starting to think Brooks was like, what the hell is this? And Greg didn't like it. Like, that is really what I'm starting to feel. And John is a professional that does not want to say or talk about it because he knows the problems it could cause. But I'm like, why? Why on earth? He wasn't playing that poorly for us. Like, he fell a little bit out of form where he was. But
he really only had like 2 bad matches in a qualifying window, and that was it. We never heard from him again.
Right. Yeah.
I'm assuming something blew up at that point.
Right. We're a month away from ramping up to get everybody fit for World Cup stuff, like where Greg's going to start going to games and making sure people are fit and ready to go when he starts making those calls in a month. And we're sitting here with a hope and a prayer that Reggie Cannon stays healthy. I don't know. Like, it's like, and that never happens. So call Matt Biazga in. Let's do it. Just call them all
Tim
in.
Ream. Tim looks good for Fulham right now.
Call him in at this point. Play 3 in the back. Throw all the attack forward. Let's just go nuts. Because Jordan, and I read the Men in Blazers, we've waited 8 years for this. And we're going into the World Cup in the worst shape we've been in under Greg Berhalter. And that is saying a lot.
Where are the goals going to come from? We can't create. We can't finish. When we do create, if this is the squad that goes in, I'm perplexed on what we can do.
Do you think we make the group stage if we continue to play like that, or the round of 16? If we play like
maybe I'm a dolt, but I voted on a poll today and I said we're getting to the round of 16. And that was after this game. And the reason why is because I do think when the games are on the line, the players are going to feel a little bit more up for it, and they're going to figure it out. I have to think that because for so long, I know that's where I went wrong with Kova, right? Because they did not do that in 2017. But all my life, when the game is on the line, we had that spirit, that American spirit of we're going to try our asses off and we are going to pull a rabbit out of the hat. And that's my faith right now. We've done it in the Nations League final. We didn't think we were going to win that game after going down a goal, and we came back and won it. Now, again, that's here, right? Even our biggest accomplishments have been here at home. That's the scary part for me. So I don't know. But I would like to think we can get out of this group still. That the players will speak up, and I hope that Greg will put us in the best position to succeed. And what I mean by that is picking the best 11. And that the talent will outshine the system and the tactics. That is my hope for the World Cup. I'm still going in optimistic because I've waited 8 years for this. I'm not going to dread it. Even if we get knocked out and we lose 3 games, I'm still going to try to enjoy the World Cup. And at that point, I'm sure he would be fired at 3 straight losses. But if we just miss out on points, I'm worried that they'll be like, oh, that's fine. But I'm not going to root for us to lose. I saw somebody saying like they were happy to see the results because of Greg, and I'm like, this is dumb. I can't ever root against my team just because I don't like the manager.
Right. They're my favorite team to root for.
Yeah.
They really are. Even when I was not huge into soccer, they were my favorite. It was my favorite time of 4 years. Every 4 years, I looked forward to this competition just because it's pride. It's you could actually rally around it. You could see people happy. They come together. It was just a cool moment. And then growing up, watching it, 2 World Cups that we actually played well in. It is. It's man, it's so cool to be able to rally around a team like this. I do think a couple things, and we don't want to always just speak on the negative. We can speak to some of the positive.
Mm-hmm.
Brendan Aronson's playing extremely well with Leeds. I think that'll continue, and so is Tyler Adams. I do think when time comes and they have this roster, we have 2 budding stars. Weston McKennie is one of the better midfielders in Serie A, which is fantastic. And I think also it speaks volumes to how good Yunus Musa might be. It really does speak volumes when he's not there. It was this team is a shell of itself. And if you really do look at the way Yunus played in the last window, he's the reason we qualified. He's the reason why we've kind of made it this far. And now, man, you got him at a young age where I do think that this kid along the side with Weston and alongside Tyler and a healthy Timothy Weah and Brendan Aronson playing as well, then I think we just score, just not even in the system. I think that's the part where I think we do have some highlights coming up. But I do think it's tough to look at it right now and think anything positive because of just horrible window we've just gone through. And maybe that's what this team needed. You can always speak to man, this is not good. They're flat. They're going to the World Cup with no confidence. These might be the guys that go, you know what? This can't happen. We can't do this. This is not acceptable. And I'm hoping that, and I think with the guys that we have, I think this is the case. They're looking in the mirror going, yeah, this isn't going to happen again. We're not letting this happen. Not this time. We're not going to go embarrass ourselves. So I think they've got the guts. I think they've got the guys to do it. Now it's just, but it does. Isn't it bad when you have to look at the lineup and go, oh God, here we go. Because he's chosen to do something stupid. It's are you serious? What is that? So I don't know. But I think there are a lot of positives. This is still a really good young team.
Yeah, and this is really where it shows that we're missing that generation, right?
Yes.
We're relying on all these young guys
100%,
because there was no good generation. That's why we failed in Kova in 2017.
They weren't taught how to lead in this competition. You're right. This is a really good point.
So this is something that is, if we had even had 3 players that were late 20s to early 30s that were world class, or not world class, but at the level that all of these young players are at, then they would have experience. They would be picking people up and being like, hey, this is what we got to do. Our captain is, Pulisic, he's 23 years old. This is where, we're running into it, you know? He's having a really tough time at Chelsea right now. And it's going to be time to hopefully he's able to put on a good performance at the World Cup, make a move in January, and then we'll be set and start looking forward to 2026 here in the U.S. New manager. The players have experience from being on a World Cup stage. They're getting older. By the time that the World Cup comes around for them, Pulisic will be like 27, 28. And even players that are like, 18 now are going to be 22, 23 years old. So, I mean, we are on the path for 2026 to be the big one. It just, I see people saying like this one matters a lot, 2022, because it needs to get soccer big here and it's, get momentum after losing momentum when we missed 2018. And I'm not so sure that's the case, because 2026 is the one. That is the one that's going to get people into this team, that are going to get this sport on the map a bit more than it is here. And we could lose all 3 games 4-0, and I swear to you, 2026 is still going to be a big deal. It's not like people are going to be out on that at that time.
I think this World Cup is, like, honestly, you know how I want this to play out? I want this to play out like we go out there and just freaking dog people. Like, just make it so uncomfortable for people. Maybe run up a really good game against England. Like, that's really what I'm hoping for. Like, making it a 90-minute game with England, whether we win, lose, draw, make it a 90-minute game with them. And I think if you compete with the big boy, because really, Jordan, think about it. Like, we haven't played like those big teams yet. You know what I mean? Like, these are good teams like Japan. I think we played Sweden at one point way back. Did we play, was it Scotland or Wales? Which one was it that we played over in Ireland at one time? Like,
Scotland, I think.
Yeah. But I mean, like, we haven't played, like a Germany or Spain or anybody like that. Like, I think with the big name, the big countries, once we start to compete with them, this team's confidence goes through the roof. And I do. I think that I think we match up well with some of the teams that we've drawn. So I think that's another thing. Like, there are just some teams you just don't match up well against. And I said this to my kids that were watching the game in school. I said, Japan is like our worst nightmare. Being young and inexperienced with this team running down our throats, and they're good on the road and we are not. This is the perfect ingredient to just have us run through. And they did. They took advantage. But that being said, like I said, when we had, oh gosh, that scared me. When we had the possession in our half, Jordan, we actually looked decent. We just couldn't get it to the position in which we needed to convert those into good goals and good chances. But I will say there were moments there in that first game. The second game, not so much, which is really the one that's like, ugh. So, yeah, I'm just hoping out of this group that we do. I think we have a good shot to finish second. I'm not too concerned. While the panic meter's at like a 4 or 5 right now, just because it was our last big warm up, I'm not putting too much stock in this because this team is so unpredictable right now. And that's the case with a lot of young teams. They're roller coasters. You sometimes you're really good, and sometimes you look like you couldn't win another game if you tried. And you and I go through this with our baseball teams, especially now. They're young. There's times where, man, it's a lot of fun to watch them. But then there's times like, what in the world is happening? So, again, it takes patience. It'll take time. And in 2 months, these players are going to be a lot different than what we've seen in September. That's how much maturity is kind of thrown at you in this sport. In 2 months, I mean, we could see a whole different Brendan Aronson than we've ever seen before.
I hope so. All right, let's. There was one MLS game in hand result, which so far is Galaxy beating the Quakes 3-2, and Seattle tonight versus Cincinnati. So we'll be talking about that next time we get together for that. I'm trying to just look at the standings real quick before we get out of here. I know it was a long one, it was a ranting one. This is what happens when we do it almost immediately after the game. All right, so that moves the Galaxy up to 5th, which puts Minnesota 2 points above RSL. They might fall out of the playoffs, which goes back into Logan's prediction on June 30th. We'll see if that comes true as we continue.
My bad, Minnesota.
now everybody except Seattle is on 32 games in the West because they will play tonight. And there's still quite a few with 31 in the East, but Cincinnati will go to 32 tonight as well as they face off against Seattle. If Seattle win, they'll be at 42 points. That'll move them up to 9th with 2 games to go, and they'll be 3 points away from 7th. It's going to be really tough for Seattle. They probably got to win out and hope some stuff really falls their way for them to get into a playoff spot. Cincy is in a playoff spot. They're in 6th with 45 points. If they win this game, they'll move up to 48 points, which would put them above Orlando. But then Orlando would have the game in hand because they both have 31. So we'll see on how that goes. Any thoughts about those games?
I mean, you look at the table, and we're finally down to, like we said, we're gonna have most teams at 32 here by the end of the week. I think it is, depending. So I mean, it's getting down to one. Minnesota. If you're a Minnesota fan, you're doing the whole thing where you're going, oh boy, you're sweating this one out once again. With the Galaxy now, like we said, I mean, they're gaining momentum. And that win against San Jose, while not like the most decisive win, but a win nonetheless. I mean, they grabbed 3 points. And now, Jordan, you look at it, they're all the way up to 5th with just a point behind Nashville. If they could get home, I mean, if they get home field, Jordan, this is like a 180 from where we were about 2 weeks ago with the Galaxy. Because you and I were talking about, could it happen again where they fall all the way out of the playoffs again? It is. This league is just crazy. The drama, the intensity, especially this time of year. And now that all these teams are kind of falling into place because of all the games in hand, it just becomes more fun. I think, Cincinnati's got a really good game coming up. So is that tonight where they play? Seattle? Is that? Seattle,
Yes.
Cincy tonight? Yeah, 10 o'clock.
Tonight.
Oh, I might be able to watch that since we're off work. But yeah, I think, this is huge. I think Cincinnati could grab 3 points and move into that 5th spot to kind of avoid having to play Red Bull. But yeah, it's getting it would be Montreal. No, it'd be Red Bull. So I don't know. I think the games coming up, I still kind of want to see them all fall into place so they're all at 32. And then once that happens, man, we can really bust out the playoff scenarios that could happen and really get into it next week on what people need to do to clinch. So, this is the most exciting time of the year. I love this time of year, especially now with World Cup on the end of it. This is like,
I know that'll be very exciting.
Great
to go right into the World Cup. So we'll have to start our World Cup coverages.
Soon.
We're also going to have some little Sporkle quiz offs that we're going to have here. I already recorded mine. Logan needs to record his.
Yeah.
Sporkle
You're going to kill me in all these, though.
I don't know. There was one I was like, maybe he can win this one, but
Man City players.
No.
Oh dang!
But it's all US based that we'll do, and we'll put some videos up on the YouTube of us testing our knowledge on things like World Cup winners, US men's national team squads, stuff like that. That we'll see on how we do. So that'll be coming soon. If you want to give us a follow on anything, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, it's all at Stateside Show. You can email us statesideshow@gmail.com. All right. Well, I guess it about wraps us up here. I hope everyone is not as down on this team as we were, but I'm assuming for the next 24 to 48 hours, that's going to be the case. And then hopefully you get it all out. Like, I feel a lot better just talking to you about it.
Yeah.
So hopefully we're in a good spot come November 21st when we kick off the World Cup.
I think we'll be good. I think we'll be good.
Well, thanks everyone for listening. You can like, subscribe, rate, all that stuff on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. If you're watching the video, like the video, comment, subscribe to the YouTube. Like I said, we'll have those Sporkle quizzes up in the build up to the World Cup coming up here. Hope everyone has a great rest of their week. We'll catch you next time talking some more MLS Road to the Playoffs.
Jordan, if I get blown away in this hurricane, man, you got to keep the mojo going for World Cup. All right. My dying wish is U.S. men's national team to win the World Cup.
There you go. I'll make it happen somehow.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
For Logan.
And good luck finding a co-host.
That's true. All my friends are down there. Okay.
Yeah.